Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about a few things, a few news stories, some stuff coming up on the horizon, and then we're going to be catching you up on things we have been watching recently, each individually. So let's get started with our On Beat segment. On Beat. This week on Beat, we've got a few trailers and one piece of news that we just kind of neglected to get to before. And that is the Super Mario Bros. Movie's box office returns. It had a really good opening. It's been a while now, though. We never covered its opening. It is currently sitting at $901.2 million globally, $440 million domestic, $457.2 million international. It's coming in close to that billion. It's really close. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's going to cross the $1 million point. And it hasn't even opened everywhere. It is opening up in Korea today, as we're recording this on April 26th, and it is going to open up in Japan this Friday. So it hasn't even opened up in basically its home territory. It's an American-made movie, but it's a Japanese property. So it hasn't even opened up in that home territory yet. There's still some big opening nights coming up. It still continues to be earning quite a bit each week as it passes by. It's only been out for 21 days. It is already the biggest film so far, global or domestic, for 2023. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's better than I expected. I mean, but that just shows how popular Mario is and how enduring of a franchise that is. People underestimated it, right? Because it's successful for a video game, but people are like, how much could a Mario movie make?
I knew it would beat expectations. I knew it was going to do better than a lot of people were thinking it was going to do. I didn't know it was going to do this well. It's doing exceptionally well.
Yes, exceptionally well. It just shows, at one point it was said that Mario was as recognizable of a character as Mickey Mouse.
It was more recognizable. I don't know where it stands right now, but yeah, I mean, at one point it was more recognizable than Mickey Mouse.
Well, you gotta think, this is Illumination's, most successful movie ever that they put out, which is insane.
It hasn't completely crossed that. I think it has for maybe its opening, but, it hasn't, it's still behind opening. Several others for the total, but I mean, it's still going, you know? Yeah. It's not
it
done.
Has it has the second highest animated opening behind it passed Frozen 2. So it's crazy to see Nintendo actually competing and beating Disney on their own turf. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, this is Mario. The cool thing is we've already heard Nintendo is talking about that they fully intend to do some more projects. I wonder how that's going to go, because if they stick to the same kind of style, there's only a few Nintendo properties that would still work within the style of kind of the Mario movie. Pikmin might work in this style. Luigi's Mansion, something like that would work kind of in this style.
Luigi's Mansion would, for sure.
Yeah. And it's a Donkey Kong, of course, and then
Donkey Kong, but
and then maybe Kirby.
Pikmin's got a really different vibe,
and then maybe Kirby,
really different vibe.
You know?
Yeah.
But the harder thing would be if you're talking about the ones that people want, something like Zelda. I really would not want to see Zelda in kind of a Illumination Mario style.
They wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
that's not a thing that's gonna happen.
Of course, not like Metroid.
Yeah, people don't have to worry worry about that. Zelda will be treated like Zelda, like the games.
Yeah.
Like, the Zelda game and the Mario game have completely different vibes, obviously.
Yeah, I think if they do Zelda, I definitely would not want it to be even remotely like this. I'd want it to be very different. I'd want them to do Zelda almost like a Ghibli film, you know?
Yeah.
Just like really, really good, really, visual, maybe even like a Ghibli film, maybe even like hand animated. It just shows Mario's doing exceptionally well. Nintendo's going to continue to work within the space, making more properties of this sort. I've seen the Mario movie. I mentioned it before. It's good. I think there's a lot of people that have complained about, it could be better. Like, you know, they could push it to be like a better movie, like a Pixar movie or something like that. Honestly, I think that if they did that, it really wouldn't feel like Mario anymore. Mario is supposed to be kind of simple and just fun, you know? And the second you try to add like a deep moral to it or a lesson or something, it's not going to be Mario anymore. You know?
Mario has never been about that. So it's traditional film critics. They don't understand the material. It's
funny because a lot of them will use the statement like, you know, it's bad as a movie because it doesn't stretch itself to people who are unfamiliar with Mario. And I'm like, who's that?
Yeah. Like, yeah, who's that? That's your crusty butt. Like, like
who's that?
these
Who's
are the most popular characters. Well, it's funny because like you say that and we joke. But like, you know, the Tetris film recently came out, on Apple, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Pete Hammond, he's the film critic for Deadline Hollywood. He reviewed it, and he admitted up front of his review he had never heard of Tetris before this movie.
I mean, you have to kind of like live in your own reality distortion field not to have heard of Tetris or Mario. It's like fucking shit.
Yeah, exactly. You see that and you're like, what?
Those people are so anomalous that I wouldn't even count it. Like, you could just say everybody's heard of Mario. People could bring somebody up and you say, yeah, but that's just the factor of
that's the point I'm making. Like,
you don't even acknowledge that.
I heard of Tetris, like, this is not the audience for a Mario movie.
It's not even just that. Like, it's just like that rate shouldn't even like be counted. There are gonna be people there are people in this world who are like in tribes that are completely cut off from society and have no reference point at all. And there's like drones that have captured footage of them, and these tribes have pointed at these drones like it's something being sent by the gods. Like they have no clue. That's like about how relevant film critics who haven't heard of Tetris or Mario, like that's where they belong, in that category of, no, we don't even count that. There's not even a reason to count that.
There's another ridiculous Mario review where, like, the reviewer commented that the film was devoid of joy. Well, like, in the review, he observed people in the theater were, like, cheering and shit.
Yeah.
It's like, how is the film devoid of joy if, like, people are, like, fucking cheering and having a good time?
Yeah.
I think you're the one devoid of joy. Yeah. Like, that's an inner problem.
Yeah, it's like, put on the Mario movie and pick up the therapist.
Yes.
Pick up the phone with your therapist on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the details of the Super Mario Brothers movie box office. Now we're going to go on to some trailers that have come out in the last week. We're going to start things off with The Flash, which had its second full trailer. It's had teasers and footage, compilations and stuff released at different points before, but it's only had one major trailer before. This is its second. It's got a very different tone than the first trailer. The first trailer was much more about kind of like the fun aspects of The Flash, and this one seems much more about the drama. It's much more tying into the idea of like the connection between Batman and the Flash, with both of them losing parents, and like that kind of connection between the two of them. That seems to kind of be the real focus in on this trailer, with a lot of Michael Keaton's Batman.
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, they're pushing Michael Keaton like hard in this movie, like almost to the point where the filmmakers decided that this character is what's going to sell the movie and not, like, the title character.
Even when it shows the title at the end, it goes through, like, a series of logos, like,
well, it goes,
you see the Bat logo and the Supergirl logo and the Flash logo.
It goes through the Keaton Batman chess logo, that goes to the Ben Affleck Batman logo, then the Supergirl logo, then a Flash logo.
Mm-hmm. So half of the logos are Batman.
Yes. because this movie has two Batmen for the price of one.
Yes. What did you think of the trailer overall?
I mean, it looks all right. It looks like it looks like a spectacle. Michael Keaton is great. Looking forward to watching him again.
I'll say that I think that the first Flash trailer was better.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot more, except for one thing. This Flash trailer had Michael Keaton's Batman saying, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts." That's the one thing that puts it over, I think, for me. But besides that, I still think the first trailer was better. I'm excited to see the movie, but it makes me a little uncomfortable, the Ezra Miller stuff, but you gotta kind of separate the art from the artist, you know?
David Zaslav said it's the best superhero movie he's ever seen.
James Gunn said it was one of the best he's ever seen, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like it's good. The director, I think, is going to be doing the new Batman movie now. The one, Brave and the Bold, I think, or something that's in the James Gunn, DCEU.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's good.
It's going to be a new actor. It's not going to be Ben Affleck. It's not going to be Robert Pattinson. It's not going to be Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
It's going to be somebody new.
Yeah, it's not about him being a connective tissue with the movies. It's just about the fact that they have a lot of confidence in him as a director, and they want to put him in charge of, the new DCEU Batman, which will be cool.
Yeah, well, there must be a lot of pressure, the Brave and the Bold specifically, because I know Superman's coming up first from James Gunn. I expect it to be fantastic, but you can flub a Superman movie. That's fine. But Batman is DC, Warner Brothers bread and butter. Mm-hmm. It's rough if you flub a Batman movie these days.
Yeah, definitely. Next trailer we got was for The Witcher Season 3. This will be the last season with Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
This is more teaser than trailer, and honestly, I'm completely checked out on Witcher.
I can tell you I don't care.
Yeah.
I watched it, and I was like, yep, that's it, just like the way it's always been. Really low budget fantasy stuff that just...
Well, you know me with this. Even before the Henry Cavill thing, I was bitching about The Witcher.
Yes.
And I was comparing it to House, saying that House isn't a good show. House has a great character, you know, and a great actor playing that character. And The Witcher is the same thing. It's not a great show. It's got Henry Cavill.
Just I think with season 1, I was I was high on the potential of what it could be, and of course it never reached that potential or came close to it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think even with the bigger budget for season 2 and stuff, I think even with that, it's still got kind of a bit of a hindered budget. I think that the top creatives involved really aren't necessarily anything to write home about.
No, the creatives involved are so far proven themselves to be very mediocre at writing and producing a show, so...
It is exactly the point, was that, and this isn't to come off as I refuse to watch it because they did Henry Cavill dirty or blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm saying.
No, I'm just
saying that he was literally the only thing that made it interesting.
This has Henry Cavill, and then it's still boring. I don't, know.
Yeah. So. Yeah, even with Henry Cavill, it's not really all that interesting. Even with him, it's not doing what it needs to do. So it's just, I'm not interested. I'm checked out on Witcher. I thought I was gonna watch that, that spin-off series that came out. Was it Blood Origin? I think it was called. And I completely checked out on that.
Oh god,
I didn't even bother watching it.
That looked so bad.
Yeah, I was I'm
gonna
give it a shot.
That looked.
I kept saying, I'm gonna give it a shot. I'm gonna give it a shot. I never gave it a shot. I just could not get up. I could not fill my care cup enough to watch that. And yeah, I'm just kind of done. I don't need more Witcher. It's dead to me. I have Witcher 3 on my computer now that I have a gaming computer, so I'll play Witcher 3. How about that?
There you go. By all accounts, the game, story in the game's better anyway, so.
All right. Next trailer we got is Next Goal Wins. This is very much there are a bunch of movies like this in say the late 80s, early 90s, where it was kind of a guy, fired from his team and he's sent off to some weird country and he's going to coach the team there, but he's going to make them be miraculous.
Oh,
it's very kind of generic generic. Yeah, it's a very kind of generic plot kind of idea.
They kind of like point out like this is they kind of point out like this is based on a true story, and it's fine. It's a familiar story, but I think if anything's gonna save it, it's gonna be Taika Waititi's writing and directing.
Well, that's the thing that caught me, because like the second they mentioned Taika Waititi in the trailer, I was like, oh, okay, that's what this is. That's what the star of this trailer is. All you needed is his name. You could have just put up the title card, Next Goal Wins, a film by Taika Waititi, and I'd go, okay, like that's all I needed, like there's a lot of like little kind of funny beats and stuff. I like the way they did the trailer, actually. I like the title cards that came in with like, the guy who lost, from the director who lost the Academy Award for
that was amusing.
Yeah.
But it looked fine.
I've seen a lot of Taika Waititi films besides just, things like the Thor movies. I've watched the Wildebeest movie and the Jojo Rabbit and stuff like that. I think his non-Thor movies are better than his Thor movies, even though I love Thor Ragnarok. But I mean, that's what makes me have hope for this, is I just know like this is just it's gonna have that sense of humor that works from Taika Waititi. So I'm interested in it for that reason. And then the last trailer we got is the long-awaited return of Black Mirror. It's been gone for ages. I believe the creator of the show, Charlie Brooker, once said when people were asking, like years ago, about like another season of Black Mirror, he was like, look at the times we're living in. Do we really want a Black Mirror right now? He's like, we're living Black Mirror right now,
like Black Mirror, like, again, it's fine. Like, there's some episodes I really like. So for me, like, it's been a very hit or miss series.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like the latter seasons had more misses than hits for me. So I kind of like dropped off of that.
But this might actually be to its benefit, because that implies an issue of quality control. That as the show went on, it just didn't have as many good ideas. The fact that it's been off for a while could imply that, that the ideas have been restocked and there could be some more interesting concepts at play. I mean, the trailer looks good. If you ignore the hit or miss nature of the last few seasons of Black Mirror, the trailer itself just looks good. And personally, I loved the first 2 seasons of Black Mirror before it went to Netflix, when it was all British, basically, That's when I really liked it. When it came to Netflix, it was hit or miss. There'd be like a good episode here, a bad episode there. And then as you said, it got worse. The last season was just pretty bad. It just didn't feel like Black Mirror anymore to me. It wasn't like really dark anymore. There were a lot of like happy themes and stuff, and that kind of felt weird to me for a Black Mirror. That's not really what that show was supposed to be, in my opinion. But yeah, I think some distance might improve its chances. Kind of like True Detective, where like the first season was really good. The second season just kind of like fell apart, didn't really work, nothing really worked. And then it was off the air for a while. And then the third season came out and it was good again. So hopefully that's the case with Black Mirror.
Yeah, hopefully.
That is it for our On Beat segment. And now we're going to move on to On the Horizon. On the horizon. On the horizon, of course, where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. We just mentioned True Detective Season 1. Well, we got a show coming up on HBO called White House Plumbers. And the connection here is that it's got Woody Harrelson. So White House Plumbers is a show with Woody Harrelson and Justin Theroux. It's from some of the writers on Veep. And it's about the Watergate scandal. It's about basically the fixers, Nixon's fixers that got caught in the Watergate scandal.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And that is coming on Monday, May 1st on HBO. Then on Tuesday, May 2nd, Redfall is hitting Xbox Series S, Series X, and PC. So that is, of course, the big vampire game that Microsoft's got. And then on Thursday, May 4th, on Peacock, Bupkis is coming out. This is a semi-autobiographical series based on the life of Pete Davidson and starring Pete Davidson as himself. It's got a bunch of heavy hitters involved in the cast. Edie Falco is playing his mom. But the big thing to write home about here is Joe Pesci is going to be playing his grandfather. And what's big about that is that you don't really see Joe Pesci that much anymore. He hasn't been in anything in a while.
Yeah.
And it's not like his career faded. Like he basically stopped appearing at the top of his game. When people were like, oh, he's amazing and stuff, that's when he stopped appearing and stuff. So anytime he comes back, it's kind of of a moment to be excited about. And, so that's coming on Thursday, May 4th on Peacock. Also on Thursday, May 4th, but on Disney Plus, Star Wars Visions Volume 2 comes out. We mentioned that, I believe, last week, right? That's when we talked about the trailer for that.
Yeah, we talked about it last week.
Yeah, it's the anthology Star Wars series where it's done by a bunch of different animation studios doing different stories. Then we have Unicorn Warriors Eternal coming to Adult Swim, also on Thursday, May 4th. I saw this title, saw it being an Adult Swim thing, kind of was like, wasn't really paying attention. And then I read a little bit into it. This is Gendry Tartakovsky, who is now doing this as a supernatural steampunk series, animated series. If you don't know who Gendry is, he did Samurai Jack among a bunch of other kind of major projects back in the 90s and early 2000s.
And you should know, anything he makes is going to be awesome. Come on.
Yeah. I just saw the title, saw Adult Swim, and I was kind of not really all that interested. And then I saw his name, and I was like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
Then we have a series called Silo coming out on Friday, May 5th on Apple TV+. This is an adaptation of the novel series by Hugh Howey, and it is about an underground bunker. Basically, the atmosphere above Earth is toxic. Everybody's had to go underground into this bunker. The human race has declined. It's down to 10,000 people left in the human race, all living in this underground bunker. But time has gone by, and people don't even really know why they're in the bunker, or that they know it's toxic, but they don't know much beyond that. They don't know who built the bunker. They know that whoever it looks into what's going on is disappearing. So nobody really knows what's going on, and there's some tension going on. The interesting thing here is that this is being run by Graham Yost, who did Justified. So that just,
Yeah,
I think the thing to talk about, what we've talked about so far on this podcast, is it's all about the people.
Yes, it is.
Next Goal Wins didn't sound interesting until we saw Taika Waititi. Unicorn Warriors Eternal didn't sound interesting until we saw Gendry. And Silo sounds, okay, I guess. And then we see Graham Yost.
Yeah, so a lot of talent behind this stuff.
Yeah. And then, also on Friday, May 5th, but coming to theaters, is the science fiction space-based movie we've all been waiting for, Space Wars Quest for the Deep Star.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no, just kidding, actually. I'm talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Oh, yeah. Awesome.
Finally, so psyched for this. Yeah, MCU Phase 5 didn't exactly have the greatest start, but it's getting a second go now with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Trailers look phenomenal. I'm already emotionally attached to everything that's going on. I so want to see this movie. I cannot wait. And that is
it. Yeah, it looks awesome, obviously.
Yeah, and that is it for our On the Horizon segment. And now we are going to move on to On Tap.
What we've been watching, what we've been playing, what's on tap.
On Tap is where we talk about stuff that we've been watching or playing or whatever, but it's not in full spoilers. We're not going to be going into full spoilers of it. And it's not necessarily things that we've both seen. So we're going to be just talking about individual things that we've seen. So we've got a little bit of a lineup of things to go through. And I'm going to kick off with the first few before we get to your pick. And I'm going to start with the anime season. So every season we get new anime. There's been a pretty big season this time for spring. And there's 3 series I kind of wanted to highlight and point out. The first is called Hell's Paradise. This is from MAPPA, the studio behind Attack on Titan. And it's a really interesting story, and it's a really interesting anime. It's basically, there's this shinobi ninja, who was captured, and they're trying to execute him, and they can't. They just can't execute him. They try to cut off his head, the sword broke. They lit him on fire, it just burned out around him. He just won't die. And he claims that he wants to die, but there's something kind of suspect about that. And this one executioner who might actually be able to kill him, she goes and she talks to him, and she's going to be executing him, and she points out to him in a way that makes him understand that he actually doesn't want to die. And she offers him a pardon conditional on him going on this expedition. And so this expedition is there's this land they're calling Paradise that they've been trying to reach. Japan's been trying to reach reached this land. It's like a supernatural place. And every time they've sent an expedition, it's never returned. And the only person who has ever returned from paradise was a guy who returned like half dead, and immediately like flowers started sprouting from his body, and he basically became like a vegetable. Like he's just unconscious with like flowers sticking out of him. And they believe that like the elixir of eternal life is located in the secret area, and they decide that their next expedition they're going to be sending a bunch of criminals, like wanted criminals, the worst of the worst, out to get it, including our main character who cannot die.
Oh,
and
interesting.
That's what this anime is about. And I've seen 2 episodes of it so far, and it is really good.
Nice.
So the next anime I'm going to point out is from the studio behind Bakuro and Dulalala. I don't know if you've heard of those, but they both of them have a very kind of jazzy vibe. They're both really interesting. This one's a little different. It's like a reverse isekai. It's weird. So there's this kind of fantasy world, and in it there's this necromancer, and he's given up on humanity, and he's just become this monster in this cave. And you know, the society in this world, they send like a hero out to kill him, and at the moment the hero strikes, this necromancer's last spell reincarnates him, and he wakes up in the body of a recently killed kid that's like a young man from Japan in Tokyo. And he quickly becomes the target of the person who had killed that young man. And it becomes almost like a John Wick-like society of assassins that are kind of after him. And he doesn't seem to have any access to magic. He's like woken up as well. He's like, there's like no real magic here, until he stumbles across a place where like the Yakuza and the assassins and stuff basically go to like kill and leave bodies. And as a necromancer, he just basically like absorbs all the souls in that area, and now he's like a really powerful necromancer, but he's in this weird world with like assassins and a modern day Japan, but with like assassins around everywhere.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so it's kind of reverse isekai, but it's from like a really good studio, basically.
I think reverse
isekai
is a more interesting concept than isekai, to be honest.
Just because isekai's been done so much.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
And the last one I want to point out isn't necessarily a great series, but it's funny, and it's called Mashal, Magic, and Muscles. And I'm sure you're aware, even if you haven't watched it, you're aware of like One Punch Man, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now imagine you took Saitama, the character from One Punch Man, who's like just constantly nonplussed and is impossibly strong, but just doesn't even like even understand his own strength, and he's just bored and dull, and send him to Hogwarts. That's what Mashal, Magic, and Muscles is. There's like direct references to scenes in Harry Potter and stuff in it. It's not just like he's in a magic school or something. It's straight up like Hogwarts, basically. Yeah, it's just a really funny show, basically seeing a Saitama character in a Hogwarts-like school. So that is the last one I'm going to highlight. There's some other good anime out this season too that I've heard of. I just haven't watched them yet, so I didn't bring any of those up because I'm not going to recommend something I haven't seen. And that's it for the anime season, but I have another anime to talk about, and that is I saw in theaters Suzume, which is a anime from the creator of Your Name and Weathering with You, some of the like the really big, massive hit anime movies of the last like 10 years or so. He's kind of like the new it guy for, anime movies in Japan.
Oh, really? That's
and
cool.
His next movie, or his current movie, Suzume, is out in theaters right now, and it's pretty good. It's basically about this high school girl, and she like encounters this man, and he asks her if there's any like old ruins in town. He says he's looking for a door, and she kind of points him to, there's this one abandoned village or something in this one area. And he goes off and goes there, and then she's like having this like something striking her about him. Like she's like, there's something like I need to go. And so she ditches school and like goes to where the ruins are to find him. And what she finds is him trying to close this door that's like in the middle of these ruins. And there's all this energy pouring out. And when they like, there's like a giant like spiritual like worm, they call it the worm, that pointing up into the sky, it falls down to the earth and like causes like a big earthquake. And what she ends up finding out is that she accidentally freed this like cat deity or something that's supposed to be protecting the world against this worm from coming out of these doors that need to be closed. And the guy she ran into, his job is to go around and find these doors and close them, make sure they're locked, so that the worm can't escape. And then if the worm escapes, it causes like natural disasters So she's going around trying to do that now, and the guy gets turned into like a 3-legged chair by the cat. And so she's got this like now animate 3-legged chair that she's like carrying around and going around trying to stop these things. She's going around doing this. She's a high school girl. Her aunt, because, you know, her mom's passed away. They reference that. And she lives with her aunt. Is like, where the fuck is my niece? Like, why is she gone? You know, she's just sending messages saying, I'll be fine. I'm just not going to be home for a day or something. Just in the middle of the week. So she's panicking, trying to get her back. And the girl's going around with this chair, trying to close doors, chasing after this cat that's supposed to be like a lodestone to protect the world from this worm, and ends up tying into something, a really big disaster, a really big, fairly recent disaster in Japan, in a way that's like really emotional and stuff. It's just a really good movie. It hits on like a strong emotional beat in that moment.
Oh wow, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, it is. It's very good. I haven't watched any of his other works. Like, I've heard of them, but I've never watched them. And now I kind of want to go on a little journey and watch the rest of his stuff. But yeah, so that's Suzume, out in theaters right now. The next thing I'm going to talk about is Renfield. This is the Dracula movie with Nick Cage and Nicholas Hoult. Nicholas Hoult playing Renfield and Nick Cage turning in an amazing performance as Dracula in a way that you could only have Nicolas Cage as Dracula.
Right.
And yeah, it's just an exceptionally well-paced movie that's just beautiful looking, fun, and it's gory, but it's like gory in kind of a fun way. And it's just a lot of dark humor, and it's Nick Cage as Dracula, hamming it up like to the best of his ability. He's going full Nick Cage on this movie, and I highly recommend it. I just think it's really good. I think the best thing about it is it's just so exceptionally well-paced. It's never slow. It's always interesting from beginning to end.
So it's safe to say you enjoyed it.
Yes. And now we're moving on to your pick, what you watched this week. Tell me about Scream 6.
Okay, so Scream 6. So did you watch Scream 5?
I haven't watched any Screams except the first two.
Really? Why?
Yeah, I just never got around to watching them after the first two.
Oh, okay.
I never got around to 3, and then 4 came out, and I hadn't seen 3, and then 5 came out, but I hadn't seen 4. You know?
If you skip any of them, you could probably skip 3. Like,
yeah, I've heard that.
But yeah, like, this movie is very dependent on you having seen Scream 5, unfortunately, because, like, it kind of picks up with the survivors of Scream 5. And Yale shows up in this one, too. And basically, at this point, they're in New York, and they're going to college, and then the Ghostface killings start up again, obviously. And it has, like, a big connection to Scream 5 because, you know, the killers turn out to be related to the killers from Scream 5. And they're seeking revenge.
Yeah, like, there's kind of a link between Scream 1 and Scream 2.
Yes.
And then I know Scream 3 is pretty much the one everyone says you could skip. But I know in, like, Scream 4, isn't that the one with, like, Hayden Panettiere's character comes in?
Yes.
And then she's supposed to be in this, right? As well?
She is in this. She returns in this one. So she's in Scream 4, and then she was in Scream 5, but she returns in this one. She's another returning character. And it's funny because, like, they reference this, but, like, Scream 5 was definitely a riff off of Scream 1. This is a riff off of Scream 2. Because it has, like, a lot of similarities to Scream 2, including in the same way that Scream 5 had a lot of similarities to Scream 1, this has a lot of similarities to Scream 2, including the college setting, who the killer turns out to be, and what their relationship to Scream 5's killer is. There's a lot of parallels there, which is obviously done on purpose.
It's interesting because Scream was very much... It was a take on horror movies. Like, it was referential to horror movies. Like, it wasn't just a horror movie that had similar elements, but it lived and breathed within an understanding of horror movies.
Yes.
And now it's, like, gone back to being, like, referential of itself.
Yeah, it's referential. It's still referential of horror movies, or I think, like, it evolved now to be referential of, like, movies in general. Because, like, Scream 5 talked a lot about, like, the concept of requels. They're like, Scream 5, like, took the premise and said, like, oh, this is a requel. And one character asks, what's a requel? And, like, the character that's explaining this, which is Mindy Meeks, who's, like, the new Randy of, like, Scream 5 and 6, like, is explaining, like a requel is like a sequel that's a reboot of the franchise, but still follows the story continuity of the previous films.
Well, it's like Scream 5 was just called Scream, right? Like that was,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that was also done on purpose. And then they say like, oh, like in this movie, she's like, oh no, we're in like the sequel to a requel. So that means like we're not just in a sequel anymore, we're in a franchise. And in franchises, anybody can happen. Like even the main character can die. Like, even Luke Skywalker died for the sake of the franchise, so nobody's safe.
That's funny also because this is the first Scream movie that doesn't feature Neve Campbell.
Yes.
That wasn't like an intentional thing done story-wise in the movie. That's just because there was a contract dispute over pay.
Yes, there's a contract dispute over pay. They actually mention her character in this movie. Gail reveals, like, in her first scene in the film, that she talked to Sydney and that Sydney took her family and went into hiding in response to the attacks. And Gail says, you know, she doesn't need to be involved. She's been through enough and she deserves her happy ending.
That's cool if they did it that way.
Yeah.
They handled it that way. But yeah, so that's interesting with it. I have to ask, how's my girl Jenna Ortega doing?
Oh, she's doing fantastic. She kills it in this movie. Literally. Oh yeah, she's great.
She's like the new Scream queen. It's crazy. Not just Scream the movie, but just horror movies in general, you know?
Right. It's funny because like I think Melissa Barrera plays Samantha in this, and she's like the main character. She's like the daughter of Billy Loomis. You know, that's her connection. Like in Scream 5, she finds out she's Billy Loomis's daughter. She's the main character. Her sister Tara is played by Jenna Ortega. And honestly, like, no shade to Sam, but like I think Tara comes off as like more the main character, or maybe they're just like dual protagonists at this
Jenna
point.
Ortega is like the it girl, you know, right now.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. It's with those weird surprising rises where you just start seeing an actor everywhere, you know.
It's really cool because like for this movie, like Scream 5, like they had a twist on the opening scene, because the opening scene for Scream 5 was Jenna Ortega, and the trope in the Scream movies is always like the opening scene always features like a hot, like on the rise, you know, or well-known actress who gets killed in the opening scene.
Yeah, like Drew Barrymore in the first one.
Yes. And so Jenna Ortega, like, is in the opening scene of Scream 5, and she gets attacked by Ghostface, and as Ghostface is about to make the killing blow, the cops arrive and Ghostface gets chased off, and like she ends up surviving and being like a major character for like the rest of the movie and this movie. So like they subvert that expectation at the beginning of Scream 5.
That's cool.
The opening of Scream 6 also has like a really awesome like subversion of the trope, because it opens with Samara Weaving, who, spoiler alert, does get killed in the opening scene. She doesn't survive it. She's killed by Ghostface, who takes off his mask and reveals himself, like, right at the beginning of the movie, to be, like, a college classmate of Tara, and he's stalking Tara and Samantha, it's revealed. And then it follows him back to his apartment, where, like, he gets a call from his partner, who he's planning, like, the upcoming murders with, and, like, his partner's, like, playing games with him. And then it leads into a scene where, like, his partner tells him to, like, he's asking, like, where in the apartment, you know, his partner is. And his partner's on the phone going, like, oh, you know, let's just play hot and cold. And, like, it gets to the point, he's led to the fridge, and he opens it, and his partner is in the fridge, all killed. And, like, another Ghostface comes out and kills him. And he goes, what are you doing? I thought we were going to finish, like, Richie's movie. And Richie was, like, the killer from the last one. He's like, I thought we were finishing Richie's movie. And, like, this Ghostface just says, fuck movies.
That is a cool, subversion.
Yeah. It's a really awesome opening scene. I really like that. And yeah, it was a fun movie. Can't say too much more than that, because it's just an overall, like, it's a fun ride. I think I enjoyed it more than Scream 5, to be honest. Scream 5 seemed very samey. And this in a lot of ways is also, but like, I think like I enjoyed this Ghostface more. This Ghostface is more brutal, more in your face. And the change in setting made it more novel. Yeah, it's just a fun movie. I enjoyed that.
Speaking of a horror franchise that has a new entry that transports itself to a new setting that happens to be one of the biggest cities in the United States, we have another horror movie that's from a franchise that gets relocated into one of the biggest cities in the United States. And that is Evil Dead Rise, which now takes place in Los Angeles in a apartment building. So it's like a condemned apartment building that's about to be torn down. And the residents there are all basically looking for a new place to live, and most of the stuff doesn't work because the building's condemned, and they're just kind of in this building, and an earthquake happens, and as a result of this earthquake, a sealed off area becomes exposed, and a character finds a copy of the Necronomicon. The thing that this movie's doing interesting, and it's not even just necessarily in the movie, but like in talk from the director of the movie that's mentioned this, is that they're playing on the idea of the 3 Necronomicons from Army of Darkness, and saying that those are 3 separate books. They're all real Necronomicons, but they're 3 separate Necronomicons.
Oh, interesting.
And that this is a different Necronomicon than the one that, Ash has been encountering in the other Evil Dead movies. And perhaps the other 3rd Necronomicon is the one from the previous Evil Dead remake that came out. So it's kind of tying it all together.
What about the Necronomicon from Jason Goes to Hell?
That's just a cheap knockoff.
That's just a cheap knockoff, yeah.
But yeah, so it's so now you have this story about 3 Necronomicons kind of building up that we might be getting more movies, because this movie was a success, which means we're probably going to be getting more, and they're kind of building up like a bigger universe, I guess, for Evil Dead, and 3 separate books and different groups and different areas that can be affected. So even if one character hides a book or finds a way to dispose of it or get rid of it, that doesn't mean that another character won't find a different book. So that's what happens here. A character finds a book, finds a vinyl recording of a group of priests that wanted to translate the book and recorded themselves translating it. So like the reel-to-reel in the original Evil Dead that they played, and then the incantation brought the evil back. Well, this is a vinyl recording that, one of the characters plays, and it brings the evil back. And it invades this apartment complex in Los Angeles, this condemned apartment complex. And as the trailers have shown, it takes over the mother of these 3 children. The main character of the movie is this mother's sister. So she's like the aunt of the children. And she comes to visit when all of this happens. She's a guitar tech for a touring band, and she finds out that she's pregnant. And she goes back to visit her sister to try to get some advice and kind of figure out her life, like what she's going to do now, and finds out that she's really been inattentive to her sister, and that her sister has been having all sorts of her own problems that she's dealing with. And then while all of that's happening, Evil Dead happens. And yeah, it's brutal and it's ruthless. I do have a few issues. They're kind of light. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. There's just certain things where it just feels like a little bit less relentless than I would expect from Evil Dead. Like, right. When I talk about Evil Dead and I talk about relentless, what I mean is that, in the first Evil Dead movie, a character gets stabbed in the ankle with a pencil. They don't just get stabbed in the ankle, then the pencil gets turned and twisted around inside of their ankle. It's that kind of relentlessness that to me like defines Evil Dead, where it's just like it starts happening and it just doesn't stop, and there's like a cruelty to it. It isn't just like a zombie movie where the zombies are literally just mindless and going to kill everything and that's it. They're trying to just eat everything. That's not what this is. It's vicious. There's like a sense of cruelty that's at play, and that is true in this movie as well, except there's a few points where it looks like it's going for the most ruthless thing possible, and then it like kind of diverts and does something slightly less ruthless. And I thought that was a little disappointing, because Evil Dead is all about going like beyond where you expect. You get stabbed in the ankle with a pencil and that's bad enough, but then the pencil starts getting twisted around in the wound and it's like, oh my god, like they just pushed past my comfort zone, when you're watching it. And that's to me what defines Evil Dead. And I think that in some places, not in all, it's still a pretty relentless movie overall, but in some places, like I don't think they went as far as they could have with the cruelty to make it really feel like Evil Dead. It's still very good. It's still shot exceptionally well. It has a great cold open. The title card on the cold open is exceptional. It's like stunning. It is just, all of it works. I just wish that it was even more relentless than it already is.
Right.
That's what I'll say.
Yeah.
I'll still say it's excellent. It's not, that's not to say at all that like it doesn't live up to Evil Dead or anything. It's totally an Evil Dead movie. It's totally good. It's totally got a lot of cruelty in it. It just doesn't quite go as much for the jugular as I'd like it to.
Okay, yeah, sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, that's Evil Dead Rise, currently in theaters. And that brings an end to our On Tap segment. Next week, we are going to be jumping back into the world of John Wick. We're going to be talking about John Wick Episode 2. And if you remember, when we covered John Wick last time, we didn't just talk about John Wick, but we talked about the influence it had on other movies. And one of the movies we pointed out in particular was the movie Nobody, starring Bob Odenkirk. Well, we're going to be talking about John Wick Part 2 and Nobody, in keeping with our John Wick effect theme that we set up when we did the first movie. Now we're going to be covering 2 movies, one John Wick movie and one movie that is clearly inspired by John Wick and kind of subtly tied to John Wick, I guess, as well. So that's it for this week's podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you go to the container story of any of our podcasts on our official website, you will find links to all of our other social accounts, our Facebook page, our official Twitter accounts, that's kind of not really used. But our personal Twitter accounts as well, which again are at Tyson Gifford and at Voxel Hero, are there, as well as our SoundCloud page and our direct link to our RSS feed for the podcast. All of that stuff is there. You can subscribe to the podcast through any podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcast or Pocket Cast. Any of those, you should be able to find us by looking up OnScreen or the Total Screen. That should help you find that podcast there. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the On-Screen Podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.